If you've ever watched a Bond movie or a spy show, as I often do, you've probably seen people opening offshore bank accounts in mere minutes and traveling around with a suitcase full of passports. And some of that stuff is possible, but not the way the spy shows present it. Today, I'm going to bust some of the spy show myths. From spy shows like Burn Notice to Covert Affairs to The Blacklist to James Bond movies and others, Hollywood makes the nomad capitalist lifestyle seem easier than it is. And I think a lot of people probably have the idea that they shouldn't go offshore because Hollywood presented it like it's the province of people who are doing something bad. The reality is the vast majority of people who have money offshore just want to be diversified. They have a legitimate business reason to do it. They want to hold another currency. They want to earn higher interest rates. They want a second passport because they just want a backup plan from their country, or maybe because their ancestor entitles them to get it and they just want to have more options for their kids to live wherever they want in the world. And so getting things like second passports, having offshore bank accounts may come with some reporting requirements in your country, but it's a little bit more difficult process than the spy shows tell you. So let's start with stuff in the financial arena. You will see spy shows talking about numbered bank accounts. They talk about, oh, he's going to one of those banks with a numbered account in Switzerland, in Aruba, you name it. Numbered bank accounts don't really exist anymore. Now, you do have bank privacy in some countries where the bankers aren't going out and telling everybody your business. One of the things that you'll see in some Central American countries is people want access to bank secrecy because they don't want the banker telling people in the cartel or taking people in crime or just passing the information along. They want bankers that can get in trouble if they share their information. But there's no such thing really as bank secrecy from the government anymore. There's no idea that you just go and put a bag of cash on a bank's desk and they take it and just give you like a claim check as if it were a coat. Banks know who you are. There's a lot of KYC procedures. That hasn't happened since the Wolf of Wall Street days, and it's just not something that exists anymore. Banks know who you are to varying levels, but pretty much it's pretty clean KYC. Another issue that you see in some of these spy shows is you'll see the criminal and the spy are meeting up, and they're saying, okay, send the money to this account. It's always some account in the Caymans that they just opened in like 5 minutes. They act like you just open accounts like it's so easy. And sure, I mean, if you live in, let's say, the United States, you might just drive down the street and go to Chase or go to Bank of America, go to Wells Fargo, or wherever you live, be able to just open a bank account with a driver's license or a national ID, pretty quickly. And that's because when you are in your own country, they can check all your records. And basically the United States in particular, they just look at things through the U.S. lens. So they can run you through all the databases in the U.S. They can check if you've screwed any other banks. They can check your credit. They can check everything about you in a matter of minutes. And okay, great. Hey, here's your bank account. When you involve international banks, and especially smaller banks or in smaller jurisdictions, it's harder to do things internationally. They need to do more rigorous checks. And you're not going to open accounts at the same pace that you would. One thing we see when we open accounts for folks is they're sometimes surprised that it takes longer than, again, just driving down the street and going to a bank. It may take anywhere from a day to a couple of weeks to open a bank account in a different jurisdiction, especially if you're not willing to go there. And so if these spies and criminals in these various shows who were just opening accounts, at the snap of a finger without even going to the Cayman Islands, just doesn't happen. And then they say, oh, okay, well, send the money. We're getting together to send the money in my brand new account. They log into some weird looking online banking and they just say, okay, send the money, and they act like it's going to be in there in 30 seconds. Now, countries like Singapore, Malaysia, many others, Europe's single euro payment area, have found ways to move money, very quickly, in some cases almost immediately, between banks. And so you can move money between one bank account of your own to the other. You can pay people very quickly. The U.S. has the ACH system, which isn't quite as instantaneous as some of the other systems. But when you're sending a wire through the SWIFT system, if it's going out of, let's say, the United States directly, where it might go in U.S. dollars, out of the U.S., and it's going into U.S. dollars somewhere else, it might go through the intermediary bank very quickly and be there in, an hour in some cases. But it's not going to be there in 30 seconds. I mean, you watch some of these spy shows where the criminal gets there like, it's been 26 seconds. Like, what's going on? And then on the screen, it just magically changes. It just magically pops up and refreshes. Oh, there's $200,000. And that's just not how it works. The other thing that doesn't work the way that they position in the spy shows is that you often see they send some spy down to find some compromised banker, of which there probably aren't nearly as many as you would like to think. I mean, again, the Cayman Islands and what they call the so-called money holes are under incredible scrutiny these days. They are small jurisdictions. The ones that had any issues whatsoever really aren't in the offshore banking business at all anymore. And there are jurisdictions in small Caribbean countries that probably didn't do anything wrong that are still not in the business because they just got pressured out. So the idea that there are a bunch of corrupt bankers who are just storing cash for money launderers and drug dealers and terrorists, and they know about it, and they're just walking around in their suit in some beautiful cobblestone plaza, is not happening. But what also is not happening is that bankers are then desperate to talk to someone. It always goes where, oh, hello, Javier, we'd like to open an account, or we need to talk to you. Oh, banking hours are over. They always catch them outside when they're leaving, at 4 o'clock. Oh, well, our grandmother just died, and we stole all of her jewelry, and we want to bring, we have a lot of funds. Oh, okay, well, that changes everything. Please, meet me in a shady park tomorrow at 2, and we'll discuss how I can handle your illicit funds. I mean, number one, bankers aren't desperate to talk to you in the first place. I mean, you can really have to struggle. One thing that we do at Nomad Capitalist, we do full-time research and development, reaching out and talking to not only lawyers and real estate people and immigration firms, but also banks, because it can be hard to get in the door. Again, I think especially a lot of Westerners, they're used to just like, I sent an email to this bank in Switzerland. They didn't respond. They're often not going to respond either because they're inefficient or they just don't care. And, I meet with a lot of bankers. I had one in Switzerland recently take me to lunch. I almost fell on the floor, quite frankly, because normally they're trying to push people away. And it's not even a matter of how much money you have. I mean, I remember having a client once who had like $500 million who said, oh, I was talking to this, very secure bank and before I hired you. And they were just kind of like, I mean, the guy's source of wealth is very well documented. And legitimate banks are just like, okay. And so this is why, we help people open bank accounts. Again, it is more difficult than going to Westpac or going to Chase or going to whatever the bank is where you live. And bankers are certainly not desperate to talk to you. And if you go and say even a word about something illicit, I mean, I don't know any banker that's going to want to continue that conversation. Even if they say, oh, well, why did you want to open your company in the UAE? And you're like, oh, yeah, zero tax, love zero tax. They're going to be like, oh, we don't want someone who's trying to save tax. But okay. People move to the UAE. It's not illegal to reduce your taxes if you do it the right way. And everyone knows the UAE has zero, tax on personal tax and zero tax now on free zones. But if you were to say that, they're going to be sketched out. So if you certainly say, hey, we just looted somebody, they're not going to be like, oh, please let me clear my calendar. It just doesn't work that way. So that's the financial side. On the passport side, right, people talk about, I want to get multiple passports because I want to be like James Bond. And I always encourage people, if you're doing this stuff, okay, make that your secondary priority. It's cool to have multiple passports. Sometimes I just kind of stare and I just look at them, and sometimes my wife will get angry at me because you're always looking at your passport in the plane, and then you put it somewhere or it falls to the seat and you almost forget it. So you can enjoy having multiple passports. There's a beauty. I imagine like having children where you just kind of look at the different passports. But you don't want to make your main reason for having second citizenship just, looking through a passport book or, pretending that you're James Bond or some spy or Jason Bourne or something like that. And so one of the things you'll see is that, these people all have this safe where they have all the different passports. And I understand that the CIA and other intelligence agencies, they do, they forge their own currency. They forge different passports. They have the various chips. That's generally, though, people aren't just going around with, you can't just make up different passports. Passports aren't easily printed. Now, what you will find in many countries that are smaller is you can either pay an expedited fee or they just naturally get things done as little as in a day. And so if you're in the United States and you were waiting during the pandemic for over a year and a half, understand that during the pandemic, I was getting my passport renewed literally in the same day. So that's a point in the favor of smaller countries that like to be more efficient. But generally speaking, they're not going to be printed that quickly. Another thing is that everyone can visit the U.S. easily. So you watch these shows, and they'll be like in the CIA and the CIA headquarters, and they'll say, "Oh, we got this guy who's he's coming into JFK today. It'll be some guy from Egypt or Bangladesh or something with maybe a shady past." Understand you've got about 42 countries of people that can just come to the United States. All of them, but basically Canadians, need to fill out a form called ESTA before they come in. And if you've ever been to Iran or Somalia or any of these Muslim majority countries that the US doesn't like, if you've ever done anything they don't like at all, they're going to pick it up in that form, they're going to run it through their database, you're not even getting in, right? Let alone someone from Egypt who has no known job and is involved in some weird stuff. I mean, that person's probably not getting a visa. Now, obviously, some very wealthy Egyptians, Bangladeshis, Pakistanis, you name it, whatever. Sure, they can come in. But this idea that they never tell you that not just anyone can visit the US, not just anyone can visit Australia, to a lesser extent, not just anyone can visit the UK. It's a little bit easier to get in the UK. But they don't seem to understand visa policies in this show, and I suppose that matches kind of the Western perspective, that people from Western countries don't understand you need visas. And so if you're getting a second passport, all right, we've had people who say, oh, just give me the cheapest second passport. And then they don't realize that if something ever happened to their first passport, they would be able to visit fewer countries. People just think oh, well, I don't need a US visa if I just want to visit. Well, that's the point, right? If you're coming from some African country, whatever it is that they don't want people coming in, right? Why don't you see that entire country in the United States, right? Because they greatly restrict who gets a visa. You have to really prove that you can get it. And the idea is that if you just come to visit, some people will overstay, right? So the idea that everyone's just landing in the United States, they're coming in at the United, Flight 42 today to Newark at 2:15. It's just not that easy. They also say how terrorists can visit the U.S. I watched one show where this guy was involved with the IRA, right, in the 90s. He was setting up bombs. And it's like, yeah, no one who's involved in bombing anything is, I don't care what their passport is getting into any of these countries that have a pre-clearance, let alone some that don't, right? And so I don't care if you get out of jail. I mean, you're not getting in. They also do this thing where, if you're one of the good guys, not one of the people who is blowing stuff up in your past, but if you're one of the good people and you get asylum, or if you just come over and you become like a CIA asset, that we're just going to give you U.S. citizenship. There's no real procedure to do that. Now, many countries do have that. I was watching a spy show recently that's based in France. I like watching spy shows. It helps me sleep at night. And France does have a provision where the president can sign off on exceptional naturalization for people who do really good stuff. And so theoretically that could happen. Vladimir Putin has done that for people in Russia. Edward Snowden, though, did not get naturalized that way. He just got naturalized by living there and accumulating time in country. So you're just generally not seeing people being given citizenship. It doesn't happen in the United States, and it doesn't happen in most countries overall. So the spy shows and the spy movies are wrong about bank accounts. It's not nearly as easy, and you're certainly not hiding your money these days. We say, have offshore bank accounts, report them when required, move money for diversification, hold other currencies, do it to protect yourself, do it to give yourself more options, and have other passports for the same reasons, give yourself more options. But you're not doing it in this very devil-may-care way that they make out in the shows. And I understand that Hollywood has to make things simplified because they're not going to spend the entire, episode of a show showing someone opening a bank account. That wouldn't be very exciting. And yet I think it does a disservice that people who realize this stuff is legitimate think that it's going to be easier than it is, and then get frustrated when they realize that there's more paperwork, more stuff to do. They probably try it too much on their own before they come and get some help, because they think it's as easy as things are domestically. And on the other hand, there's probably a lot of folks who are saying, yeah, banking somewhere else. No. That's only what that guy in the blacklist does. And it's not. Again, plenty of legitimate uses for this as long as you follow the rules. So don't follow the spy shows when it comes to understanding the nomad capitalist lifestyle.